Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Defending Assassin's Creed 3. Now, at first I was just expecting this to be one part, however, it became longer and longer as I worked on it, so here's part 2 of Defending Assassin's Creed 3, jumping in first with Connor. Now, one of my biggest complaints I see for Connor from people is the fact that Connor doesn't have any character development or growth throughout the game. He doesn't change at all from the moment we start playing as Connor to the very end of the game. He stays the same. However, I want to ask, why would Connor change at all? Now, I know just saying this will cause some people to get upset and say characters are supposed to grow and have character development. However, for this, I want to look at the entire game of Assassin's Creed 3. And so from the moment we become Connor to the very end of the game, I want to ask, what is the constant threat throughout the entire game? I believe many people would say, well, the Templars are. They are the main villains of Assassin's Creed. However, you would be wrong, because the constant threat is actually Connor's people losing their home and their land. Honestly, the Templars are kind of there just... they are kind of just there for a revenge plot and a reason for Connor to become an assassin, and also just because it's an Assassin's Creed game, really. However, everything that Connor does in this game is actually for saving and protecting his people. When Connor is a little kid, the Templars come and not only beat him up, but also burn down his village, which causes his mother to get killed, and while Connor grows up more people start moving out and moving onto his people's land. Connor says this when you first become Connor, like when Connor becomes a teenager. Also, Connor is given a vision by Juno that the Templars will cause harm to his people, and they will be the reason for why they will have to leave their home and their land, which causes Connor to become an assassin in order to kill him and save his people. And doing this, he ends up helping the American colonies with the American Revolution. And I want to point out that Connor helps them fight until he finds out that Washington betrayed him and is going to attack his people and will cause his people to leave at the end of the game. Connor goes and finds that everyone is gone and they all left. With all Connor has done, Connor failed at the end. Also, I want to point out that throughout the entire game, Connor is manipulated by basically everyone. Connor is manipulated by Juno, which caused him to join the Assassins for the hope that killing the Templars will save and protect his people. He is manipulated by the Sons of Liberty, an American colonist, thinking they would help and this would keep his people protected and safe, but he finds out that they betrayed him and he stops working with them once he finds out. In Assassin's Creed 3, Connor's only goal is to protect and save his people, and he fails at that at the end of the game, and everyone who he thought would help him betrayed him or manipulate him. The only person I could think of who didn't was Achilles. Achilles was really the only person who actually stood by Connor and was there for Connor, really. Everyone else manipulated him. Kind of like how nowadays our politicians and our media manipulate us and even betray us so they can do what they want, and that kind of what happens to Connor. Oh, this is stated on the back of the case. It is shown throughout the entire game that the entire motivation for Connor is protect his people. And I know people made fun of Connor for that, but it's like that's the reason. The Templars and the Assassins are kind of just there for it to be an Assassin's Creed game, really. But it's really just Connor trying to protect his people throughout the entire game. No one actually paid attention to this because instead people were just like, Connor's not Ezio. So I want to ask, why would Connor change if throughout the entire game this problem is there? Throughout the entire game, this problem is there. Because unlike other games, the Templars are not really the biggest threat. Instead, it's a threat to his people, losing their home and their land and even their lives. And again, Connor fails at the end. This is why I still wish we had at least another game with Connor, because not only would we be able to see more of Connor's life as an assassin, but we could have actually had Connor have character development and grow that people wanted him to have, but Connor couldn't have in Assassin's Creed 3 because the entire events of Assassin's Creed 3 that was going on. And like the threat that was always there that everyone ignored for Connor, or they didn't ignore it, they just made fun of. Also, I remember a video where someone was saying that everything that happens in the game was Connor's fault, and the American Revolution probably wouldn't have happened if Connor wasn't there. It is like this point where I heard it has not left my mind because it's just so stupid, and it's obvious this person does not know why the American Revolution actually started. So here's a little history lesson. The American Revolution started because the American colonists, they were getting fed up with the fact that Parliament, the British government, which is the British government, would tax them and make laws without the colonists having representation in Parliament. Up until that point, and during the French and Indian War, Great Britain basically ignored the colonists. They actually started taking care of themselves and governing themselves. And after the French and Indian War, Great Britain all of a sudden started taxing them and making acts and laws that they had to follow, even though by this point, many didn't even view themselves as British, but as Americans, and they were demanding that somebody in Parliament would speak for the colonists and represent them. However, Britain ignored their demands over and over again. When you first start playing as Connor before you enter the general store in order to get supplies for the homestead, you can hear people complain about having taxation without representation in Parliament.
The Indemnity Act, the Commissioners of Customs Act. Oh, Chancellor Townsend must have thought himself so clever when he papered these thefts and made them law, but the Constitution says we've a right to refuse, that there will be no taxation without representation. Tell me, who represented us in Parliament? Who spoke on our behalf? Signed in our stead? Give me a name. Only you can't. And you know why? You can't tell me who represented us because nobody did.
And when you come out, you experience the Boston Massacre, which is like the snapping point of people's anger towards the British. However, this didn't start the American Revolution yet, but later in the middle of the night, the Sons of Liberty did the Boston Tea Party and dumped the tea into the ocean because of the Tea Act, which basically just Britain was taxing tea, but it was taxing them for tea, and this caused the British to make even more. And Boston Tea Party made Britain make even more laws and acts and close Boston Harbor without the colonists' consent or representation in Parliament. And the thing is, this keeps boiling. It boils so much until Lexington and Concord, which was the shot heard around the world, which actually started the American Revolution. All of these events that was going on in the world at that time, Connor basically had nothing to do with them. He was basically a bystander who basically helped. Connor was not the person that got the colonists angry at Great Britain taxing them and not having representation in Parliament, or the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Connor had nothing to do with these starting. But sure, let's blame Connor, who I like to point out, he doesn't do anything to actually start it, or like he's really just a bystander who helps them until he finds out that they betrayed him. Like honestly, the complaints that people use for Connor make no sense once you actually start thinking about them, because they make up stuff like the revolution probably wouldn't have happened without him, even though Connor didn't do anything to start it, and that he doesn't change throughout the entire game. But why would he, or why should he, when the threat of his people being killed, losing the home throughout the entire game is there? Like, it would make no sense if all of a sudden he changed and started being like Ezio, but then moments later it was like, my people are in danger. No, that would ruin the game, really. Like, seriously, the game tells you many times there's really no reason for Connor to change, since his people are in danger, that the game non-stop. And again, Connor fails at the end. Also, people saying that he had no reason to kill Charles Lee other than he was a Templar, that is the biggest BS I've ever heard, because when Connor was a kid, Charles Lee almost chokes him to death.
What have we here?
You look familiar. Where have I seen you before? That wasn't very nice.
Let me go!
Listen to that. He knows English.
Small for savage.
Spirited too. We have questions for your elders. Only tell us where your village is, boy, and you can go.
Best do as he asks, child.
I could snap your neck, you know. A little more pressure, and pop. The sad little flame of your life extinguished. You are a nothing, a speck of dust. You and all your ilk, living in the dirt like animals, oblivious to the true ways of the world. The wiser among you recognize the shape of the future. They throw themselves at our feet and beg mercy. But not you, it seems. No. You cling desperately to your ways, too ignorant to know your folly. But I am not unkind. And so I spare you, that you may carry word to your people. Let them know the sooner we are given what we seek.
Connor was thrown into jail and was framed for trying to kill George Washington and was almost hung by Charles Lee.
All up as he goes along. His pedigree is pathetic, his military record even more so. I could go on and on, but we'd be here for days, so manifold are his faults, so deficient are his merits. He must be dealt with. You as well. I will abide no more flies in the ointment.
Here's how it's gonna work. First we bind you and bring you to your cell. Then tomorrow, you go before the court, accused of plotting to kill good old Georgie. Maybe we could pin the murder of the warden on you too. You did kill him after all. And who wouldn't take the word of Charlie over here? Once that's all squared away, well then.
And it is because of Charles Lee that his people were about to attack the Patriot army, and Connor had to kill his best friend.
Charles Lee, but Triot the Honadon's only in Kiawato, Donagon easy, I say, what is it? I told got Tigarungwe. Harud zit is only for a denu. The Sada Nyanda does what Nigoragani. Next the owner gone on it. The one who guard they got your scar, connecting what you scar, see what Gwenya has in a square at the new stats again. Then you start Nigora di Hunto. Then what does want ducks out there? Nezungwe da summa. That there is some. Got there is something on us. I hear you.
So no, he didn't want to kill Charles Lee for being a Templar. It was personal. This entire game for Connor was personal. It wasn't just, oh, I need to kill him because they're a Templar. It was personal for Connor. It wasn't about taking them out for being a Templars. Also, I've seen people kind of make fun of Connor and his dedication wanting to kill Charles Lee, make fun of the line of him screaming, "Give me Lee." However, I want to point out that it is Connor's dedication to killing Charles Lee. Connor almost gets himself killed. He gets injured by cannon fire when he attacks Fort George, and he also gets stabbed by a piece of wood while chasing Charles Lee. At the end of the game, Connor is extremely injured, and he almost gets himself killed because of it. And I don't know any Assassin's Creed game where the character almost dies because of simply how reckless and just how reckless they're being, and like just because of the dedication and ambition to kill the target. Also, if we're really going to use the complaint that Connor just kills Charles Lee because he's a Templar, if we're really going to go down that and complain about that, okay, let's look at all three Ezio games and ask, why did he kill those targets? Well, because they're Templars. And if you want to say, well, actually it was for revenge, okay, then why, when he actually got to the person who killed his family, he lets him live? This complaint can be used the exact same with Ezio, and frankly, every other character in Assassin's Creed, not just Connor, and it is extremely dumb, but people use it against Connor for no other reason other than Connor sucks, he's not Ezio. Also, something I love is that unlike other Assassin's Creed games, Connor's mindset is challenged throughout the entire game, and towards the end, you see him want to try to do something to go the way he wants. And at the end of the game, he hates the Patriots, he hates the Templars, he realizes Hatham was right. The only other game I could think of where they do this is Black Flag, which is another reason why the Kenways are the best characters in all of Assassin's Creed. I honestly love that at the end of Assassin's Creed 3, when Connor removes the hatchet that he put into Homestead at the beginning of the game, which says that his people are at war, when Connor removes it, he doesn't do it with anger or happiness, and it's just defeat. Like, his face, like, when Connor removes it, you can just see in his face, it's just defeat, he just drops it on the floor. It's a very bittersweet ending since Connor has lost everything by the end of this game. And I remember in part 1 I did say I liked this ending for Connor. I do like this ending simply because Connor has been able to, like, learn new things and all that. But I still wish we had another game. I do honestly think one of the reasons many people hated Connor so much, and I've said this many times throughout this video, is simply because he was not and is not Ezio. I believe that Ezio really caused problems switching over to a new character who is completely different. Also, screw you, Ubisoft, for cutting out Connor's speech, which I think is so... It should have been in this game. It would have changed people's opinion on him. And, like, people really need to... You guys really need to look up Connor's cutout dialogue, like, monologue. It's so good. Now, I want to make this perfectly clear. I do not hate Ezio. He's actually my third favorite assassin behind Connor and Edward. I love Assassin's Creed 2 and Revelations. Did not like Brotherhood that much. And the fact that Ezio grows throughout all three games, I love it. I love Ezio games. I love Ezio. I love the Ezio games. Even though I don't like the controls that much, I still love those games. However, I fully believe that the fact that we had 3 games with Ezio and just how great of a character he was, I fully believe he made it really impossible for fans to get used to being Connor, who's the exact opposite. I believe that many people thought they were going to play as either as Ezio or have another game, or have a game set in American Revolution where you're playing as a character like Ezio, who basically acts the same way. And when we found out that Connor is completely different, people didn't like it. Something I want to point out is that Connor and Ezio were raised completely differently. Yes, Ezio's family was killed in front of him. However, Ezio grew up in, like, noble life. I will say, Ezio had a better upbringing than Connor did, and was able to have a childhood, and was even able to just fool around and be a teenager, and, like, frankly, didn't have to worry about anything until his family was killed. While Connor was born in the woods with his native tribe, and when he was a little kid, was almost choked to death, then hit in the face by a musket, and then his village burns down, and then his mother is killed. And throughout Connor's life, when he's growing up, the chance of his people losing their land and home is always there, and there's never really been a moment in Connor's life where he could be happy. So they had different upbringings, so of course Ezio kind of has a more lighthearted approach. Also, Connor is not only a completely different character, but also a completely different person than Ezio. However, I fully believe that us having 3 games with Ezio really made it hard for people to become a character like Connor, who's completely different. And this is why I wish we got another game with Connor. That way we would have been able to get the character development that everyone says he does not have. And maybe actually, and he can actually start being happy and not just be the broody, not be the angry self that he is, that people complain about. Again, I love Ezio, even though I know people probably won't listen about how many times I've said I love Ezio. But I fully believe that if we got 3 games, I fully believe that I fully believe that since we got 3 games with Ezio growing throughout them, and we only got 1 game with Connor, it really made it impossible for people to actually accept being Connor, and accept Connor as someone who is not Ezio and is completely different. And this is why I wish we had another game with Connor. Now, I could have talked about this earlier, however, I wanted to talk about it after talking about Connor, and that is the relationship between Connor and Achilles. Many times throughout the game, Connor and Achilles actually argue and fight, and I think to many this just makes Connor seem ungrateful and a jerk. However, the thing is, they are both right in the arguments. During the arguments, Connor does bring up good points and is right, but he is also wrong as well, and the same goes for Achilles. Now, this is great because you actually have someone who is challenging the assassin's philosophy and not just following it blindly. And Connor brings up a good point, is one of the last arguments that Achilles failed the Assassin Brotherhood and allowed the Templars to become as powerful as they are, that they now basically control a country. While Achilles is there saying how assassins should be and how they should be failed and made the assassins be destroyed and the Templars rise to power and become as powerful as they are in Assassin's Creed 3. However, Achilles is also right about how Connor is reckless, and if it wasn't for Achilles, Connor might have gotten himself killed so many times. So they are both correct while arguing with each other, and it's nice having a student-teacher relationship like this, where Connor's always questioning and challenging the assassin mindset instead of just blindly following it. Now this part would be pretty short. However, I see many people complain about how Haytham's death and how he somehow forgot that Connor has a hidden blade. However, I do not believe that in this case. I don't believe that Haytham forgot Connor had another hidden blade. I honestly think that Haytham thought that Connor would be either too weak and he would be able to choke him out to death, since Connor could barely even fight Haytham throughout the entire fight, or. And this is personally what I believe. I think Haytham allowed Connor to kill him. And even though Haytham didn't like Connor really, what Haytham said at the very end, like when you kill him, maybe there was a little bit in him that wanted his son to live on, especially since in Haytham's journal we find out that he was the one that actually cut the rope and saved Connor from being hanged by Charles and Hickey. And a part of him I think a part of him wanted Connor to kill him and live on. Maybe even wanted Connor to forgive him a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Haytham started realizing that Charles Lee was kind of using Haytham to further his own goals by acting the way he did, and acted like Haytham was like the best person playing towards Haytham's ego. Because I do not feel like the speech Charles Lee gives is genuine, and I feel like he's just saying that for public image. Assassin's Creed 3 is one of my favorite games ever, and is my favorite Assassin's Creed game. And I love this game. I really think this game is not only underrated, but also overhated for no reason. And I honestly believe that if people actually played the game and not only pay attention, but also accept that this game is not Assassin's Creed 2 and that Connor is not and will not ever be Ezio, I believe they would either really like this game or they would just like this game. They would not hate it. I believe so many people would prefer if Assassin's Creed 3 was just like the previous games, and if Connor was just like Ezio, or if we had another game where we play as Ezio, even though we had 3 games, and in my opinion, his story ended off very nicely in Revelations. But I love how different this game is, with not only Connor, but with the characters and story and setting, compared to other Assassin's Creed games. I do wish that we got another Assassin's Creed game where we could play as Connor that sets place after Assassin's Creed 3, and we get to see more of Connor's story, and then after that game have Assassin's Creed 4, and that will be the end of the Kenway story with Edward. But instead, we didn't get that. Instead, we got Assassin's Creed Rogue, which I think was a huge missed opportunity for Ubisoft. Honestly, in my opinion, these entire 3 games should have been about the Kenway family. But instead, we got 2 games about the Kenways, and then 1 about some random guy who is not even in the Kenway family, is not related to the Kenways at all. Now, I know many are wondering why this bothers me so much, and many people are thinking, oh, who cares? Well, I care, that's why I'm talking about it. And it's because we had 3 games with Ezio. Ezio had 3 games where we got to see his adventures as an assassin. We could see him grow and change throughout all 3 games. And the next 3 games should have been about the Kenway family. We should have got a Kenway trilogy. We should have gotten Assassin's Creed 3, where it's about Haytham and Connor's story. Then another Assassin's Creed game that focuses on Connor and his continuing adventures as an assassin, and him taking down Templars and rebuilding the Assassin Brotherhood, or even have an entire game about Haytham Kenway and his journey of when he started joining the Templars, and have him at first question and have trouble going into the Templar Order since Edward was an assassin. And then the Kenway story ends with Assassin's Creed 4 and with Edward Kenway. But no, we didn't get that. Instead, we got 2 games about the Kenways and 1 about how the Colonial Brotherhood fell, which honestly I don't care. I don't care exactly how it fell. I kind of like the mystery that was in Assassin's Creed 3, where it was like, what did Haytham do to make the Assassin's Brotherhood fail? Was Haytham so powerful that he was able to take him out? But no, instead it was just, oh no, someone just betrayed them. Which, frankly, I'm getting tired of the whole betrayal storyline in Assassin's Creed. We had the Ezio trilogy that was all about Ezio, and we should have gotten a Kenway trilogy that was 3 games all about the Kenways, Haytham, Connor, and Edward. But no, we didn't. We only got 2 games about the Kenways, and 1 about some dude taken out who betrays the assassins and all that. Ubisoft really messed up on this. Now, during the events of Assassin's Creed 3, Connor is able to rebuild the Brotherhood a little bit by doing liberation missions and liberating cities from British and Templars' control. Now, you can't really rebuild the Brotherhood, which is why I really wish that we got another game with Connor. It could have been all about him rebuilding the Brotherhood. Something that I think is a neat idea that Assassin's Creed 3 brings up is the idea that the old way the assassins work, the old way the assassins did things doesn't work and might need some changing and improving. Connor and Achilles have this argument before you go to Valley Forge and before you meet Haytham. Now, I know many will say that no, the assassins do not need to change and just stay the way that it was since Altair and Ezio. However, Connor makes a good point in the fact that the Templars were able to get so powerful that they now control a country, that basically being Britain and the colonies. And this should not have ever happened. I honestly think the assassins should always be changing, and I do not like that the assassins only changed when Altair was alive, and they stayed the same. In my opinion, the assassins should be changing and improving as much as the Templars, with them evolving with the times and improving their teachings and techniques. Do you remember how in Revelations Ezio learned things from Altair by finding those disc things? I fully believe they should have brought that back. Have Connor find notes from Ezio And while Connor was rebuilding the Brotherhood and stopping the Templars, he would learn things from Ezio, and he would make changes and get rid of the things that did not work and add new things. I know many would not like this and say that's not how the Assassin's Brotherhood is, but I fully believe the Assassins should always be changing and improving with the time. I find it extremely stupid that, especially during the modern day storyline, the Assassins are doing the exact same things in the exact same ways, and exact same methods that Altair and Ezio used, which shouldn't be the case since many tactics they used back then is useless in modern day. Blending into crowds is useless because Templars will have cameras. They will be able to scan you out, and if you're an assassin, if they know you're an assassin, you will easily be spotted. You can't climb skyscrapers like you could buildings back then because they are too high, and Templars have guns that can kill you way easier than a hidden blade. The Assassin should always be changing and improving, and I would have loved if we got another game with Connor about him rebuilding the Brotherhood, and he somehow got some teachings from Ezio he learns from, and he would add some things and remove the things that caused the Templars to get as powerful that they were in Assassin's Creed 3, which I feel like Connor would do everything in his power to make sure they never got that powerful again. And it's just also, there's other ways to stay silent and take your target out quietly. You don't need a fucking hidden blade in the 21st century. Now, Ubisoft made a remastered version of Assassin's Creed 3, and now I do not have the remastered version. I have always played the original 360 version, but after seeing the graphics and just seeing the remastered version, I have to say, it looks terrible. Like, seriously, Ubisoft did not even try and put effort into this remake. I honestly do not understand how Ubisoft did a better job on the original 360 version of Assassin's Creed 3 in 2012 than they did the remastered version of this game in... When did the remaster come out? 2019? The faces look terrible. The game looks like someone made the brightness all the way up. Like, seriously, the original game Assassin's Creed 3 looks really good. Remastered just looks awful. Like, Connor looks like a fucking doll. He does not even look human. I will just play the Xbox 360 version of Assassin's Creed 3, since that is a superior version in my opinion, and that's why I have played all my 5 playthroughs of this game. Now, I love Assassin's Creed 3, and even though I really don't like that we didn't get a King White trilogy and have another game with Connor, Assassin's Creed 3 is still very adored by me. When I was doing my playthrough of Assassin's Creed 3 on this channel, when I still did Let's Plays, I honestly could not put into words why I loved Assassin's Creed 3 as much as I did. However, I believe this video really showed why and what I really think about this game, and just why I love it, and why it is my favorite Assassin's Creed game and one of my favorite games ever. Now, this defense video has been different from all my other defense videos I have made because this video took months to make. Like, I don't even remember. I started this, I think, when I started my playthrough of Assassin's Creed 3, and I'm just now finishing it. Now, I played through Assassin's Creed 3 so many times in order to get all the data I needed. I actually really like doing this. For defense videos, and honestly, for any future defense videos, I am actually going to do multiple playthroughs, take months just working on the video. So yes, defense videos will take long to make. Now, I'm very proud of these 2 videos, and defending this game was really fun because, again, it's one of my favorite games ever. However, sadly, because of this, I'm probably going to it might be a while before I play Assassin's Creed 3 again, because I have played through this game so many times to get all the information that I needed, and frankly, I don't want to play it again for a little bit.